Picture a seemingly perfect marriage between Sophia, an elegant and devoted woman, and Ethan, a powerful CEO. But what he doesn't know is that his wife is hiding an explosive secret. She's a millionaire who ran away from her own fortune to live a simple life. When Sophia's past begins to unravel, thanks to a relentless journalist and a vengeful ex-fiancé, buried secrets surface, threatening not just their marriage but also Ethan's reputation. Can their love withstand the storm? Find out now in a gripping story full of shocking twists and emotional dilemmas that will keep you hooked until the very last moment. It was a gala night in Manhattan. In a ballroom lit by crystal chandeliers, champagne glasses clinked as laughter and conversation filled the air. Ethan Carter, the charismatic CEO of Carter Tech, was the center of attention. Beside him stood Sophia Bennett, his wife, radiating elegance in a classic black dress that highlighted her simplicity, a stark contrast to the over-the-top glitz of the socialites around them. Everyone admired the harmony between the couple. Ethan, a visionary, ran his company like a fortress, while Sophia seemed like the perfect wife, discreet, poised, and completely devoted to her husband and her social work at an NGO for vulnerable women. But behind the smiles and knowing glances, Sophia was hiding something, a secret that could destroy the life she had worked so hard to build. As Ethan chatted with a group of investors, Sophia felt the piercing gaze of a man from across the room. He was tall, with a sharp demeanor, holding a small notebook. It was David Harris, a journalist notorious for his ruthless investigations. He raised an eyebrow as their eyes met and, with a faint smile, turned to converse with another guest. A shiver ran down Sophia's spine. What was he doing there? Later that night, as they rode home in their limousine, Ethan was animated, still riding the high of the evening's success. "That was fantastic, Sophia. Once again, we impressed our investors. You were stunning, as always." She offered a faint smile, but her mind was elsewhere. The sight of David Harris lingered in her thoughts. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, noticing her distraction. "Yes, just tired." Sophia rose early the next morning, as she always did. Dressed casually, she drove to the modest neighborhood where her NGO, New Beginnings, provided shelter and support for women in vulnerable situations. There, she seemed like a different person, warm, practical, and free from the superficial trappings of her life as Ethan Carter's wife. But as she entered the small meeting room, she found something unexpected. On the table was an anonymous envelope. Inside, a brief, ominous message read, "Secrets have a way of coming to light, Sophia. Be ready." Her heart raced. She glanced around, but there was no one there besides the usual staff members at the NGO. Was it just a coincidence that David Harris had appeared at the event the night before? Or did he already know who she really was? That evening, when she returned home, Ethan was in his office, papers spread across his desk. He was meticulous in his work and never left anything to the last minute. "Dinner in 10 minutes, dear," she called from the doorway, but he only murmured something without looking up. At dinner, the tension was palpable. "Did you see the news?" Ethan asked. "I didn't have time today." "Why?" "Looks like a journalist is running a series about missing heirs. One of them belonged to a pretty famous family. But I didn't recognize the names." Sophia's stomach churned. She forced a smile, but couldn't hide the tremor in her voice. "What kind of heirs?" people who ran away from wealthy families, often because of disputes or to escape the pressure. Seems like he's publishing more names next week. Sophia quickly stood up from the table, claiming she needed a glass of water. Ethan barely noticed. He was already back on his phone. As she washed her hands in the kitchen, Sophia caught her reflection in the window pane. Her entire life had been built on lies. She had run from a future she didn't want. A forced marriage, the obligation to manage the family business, and reinvented herself. Meeting Ethan had been a chance encounter that changed everything. He didn't know where she came from, and she had made sure it stayed that way. But now it all seemed on the verge of collapse. The next morning, Sophia decided to face her fears. She called her father, a man she hadn't spoken to in years. "Sophia?" came the deep, authoritative voice on the other end. "Father, we need to talk." The silence on the other end lasted long enough for her to consider hanging up. "It's about time. Come see me." Arriving at the family mansion in Connecticut, Sophia was greeted by the imposing figure of William Bennett, her father. The man she had left behind looked even older and more worn, but his voice remained sharp. "I won't pretend I'm not surprised you came back, Sophia. I thought you'd never set foot here again." She swallowed hard. "This isn't about us. I need to know why someone would send me a threatening note. Does someone know about my connection to this family?" William studied her for a long moment. "You ran thinking you could escape forever. But people always find a way to uncover the truth. Maybe it's time to stop running. And if I don't want to?" Sophia shot back. William shrugged. "Then be prepared. The world isn't kind to those who keep secrets." When she returned home, Ethan was waiting, clearly frustrated. "Where were you?" "I called several times." She took a deep breath. "I had to take care of something personal." He narrowed his eyes, clearly suspicious. "Sophia, you've never been good at hiding things. If there's something I need to know, you'd better tell me now." She felt the weight of his words. He was right, she was never good at lying. But the truth felt even more dangerous. If you were in Sophia's shoes, would you tell Ethan the truth now or wait for the right moment? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next parts of this thrilling story. The clock struck midnight, but Sophia was still sitting on the living room sofa, staring at the unlit fireplace. Ethan had gone to bed early, frustrated by her evasiveness. She knew the distance between them was growing, and the anonymous note only made things worse. In the dead of night, her phone buzzed. It was a message. "If you don't tell the truth, someone else will do it for you." Sophia's heart raced. The threat was clear, and time was running out. But telling Ethan everything about her past meant reopening wounds, both hers and his. The next morning, Ethan was colder than usual. Over breakfast, he mentioned casually, "I'm having lunch with a journalist today. They're interested in doing a profile on the company." Sophia froze. "Who?" "David Harris. You saw him at the gala, didn't you? He seemed impressed with our recent results." The mention of David made Sophia nearly drop her coffee cup. "I think you should be careful with journalists, Ethan. They like to twist stories." He frowned, surprised by her defensive tone. "I don't see why I should be worried. I've got nothing to hide." The implication was clear, but Sophia chose to stay silent. As Ethan left for lunch, Sophia returned to the NGO. In the small office she managed, she reviewed the organization's finances, but her mind wandered. She remembered the first time Ethan had talked about the importance of honesty in a relationship. He had said that trust was the foundation of any marriage. She believed that too, but how could she be honest without losing everything she had built? Her thoughts were interrupted by the office phone ringing. It was her assistant, sounding nervous. "Sophia, someone's here to see you. He says it's important." Sophia walked to the reception area and found David Harris waiting, holding his notebook and pen. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to stay composed. "Just the truth, Mrs. Carter. The question is, will you give it to me, or should I keep digging?" David followed Sophia to the meeting room, where she shut the door and faced him firmly. "I have no idea what you're talking about." He smirked slightly. "Let's not waste time, Sophia. I know who you are. The only daughter of William Bennett, heiress to a billion-dollar empire that you abandoned. That would make for a hell of a story, especially considering no one in Ethan Carter's circle knows about it." Sophia struggled to maintain her composure. "And what do you get out of this?" David leaned in. "That depends. You can cooperate and tell your side of the story, or I'll write it based on what I already know. Your choice." Before she could respond, David's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and answered with a look of satisfaction. "Mr. Carter, good to hear from you." "Yes, I'm in the middle of something, but we can talk soon." Sophia felt the ground fall out from under her. When she returned home that evening, Ethan was waiting in his office, his expression dark. "Is there something you need to tell me, Sophia?" She hesitated, trying to keep her voice steady. "What do you mean?" He held up a printed draft of an article by David Harris. The title read, "The Missing Heiress: How Sophia Bennett Fooled the World." "Is it true?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. "Ethan, I can explain." "Explain?" He scoffed bitterly. "You lied to me for years, Sophia. Our entire life is built on a lie. I did it because I needed to escape that world. Ethan, I didn't want to be controlled by my father or be just another pawn in his game." "And me?" Ethan shot back, standing up. "Am I just another pawn in your game?" Tears streamed down Sophia's face, but Ethan didn't wait for a response. He walked out of the office, leaving her alone. In the days that followed, the silence between them was unbearable. Ethan avoided Sophia, throwing himself into work and leaving the house before she woke up. Meanwhile, Sophia struggled to figure out how to handle the impending scandal. To make matters worse, another thread emerged. Oliver Grayson, her ex-fiancé, went public, giving interviews and sharing personal details about Sophia and her decision to flee their engagement. "Sophia didn't just abandon me," Oliver told the press. "She abandoned her responsibilities as an heiress. People deserve to know who they're really dealing with." The damage to Sophia's reputation began to impact Ethan as well. Investors and partners at Carter Tech started questioning the reliability of the couple. One night, Ethan came home drunk, something Sophia had never seen before. "Is this what you wanted?" he asked, tossing his keys onto the table. "To make me a target for the same people who are after you?" Sophia tried to approach him, but he stepped back. "I never wanted this, Ethan. I just wanted a new life." "Well, congratulations," he said sarcastically. "Now we've got a new life." A broken marriage and a company on the brink of collapse. Sophia felt the weight of his words. Everything she had tried to protect was crumbling all at once. The next day, while Ethan was at the office, Sophia received another anonymous message. "If you want to save Ethan, you know what you need to do." She knew exactly what it meant. She would have to face Oliver and her father again. But this time, to protect not just her reputation but the man she loved. Should Sophia fight to win back Ethan's trust or accept that he may never forgive her? Share what you would do in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow this thrilling story full of twists and turns. The tension was almost tangible. Days had passed since Ethan had discovered Sophia's true origins, and the silence between them grew heavier with each passing moment. Though they lived under the same roof, they felt like strangers. Ethan spent more time at the office, burying himself in work to avoid confrontation, while Sophia isolated herself, trying to find a way to make things right. That morning, Sophia's phone rang. She hesitated before answering, unprepared for the voice on the other end. "Sophia, darling, it's Oliver." Her heart stopped. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. "Just to talk. Maybe meet up. We have unfinished business. Don't you think?" She gripped the phone tightly. "I have nothing to say to you." "Oh, but I think you do. After all, I hear Ethan isn't handling this situation too well. He could be next, you know." His tone was insidious. "Meet with me or things might get worse." Sophia knew she couldn't trust Oliver, but she also couldn't ignore his threat. That evening, while Ethan slept in the guest room, she slipped out of the house. She met Oliver at a discreet restaurant, where he was waiting with his usual air of arrogance. "I always knew you'd come back to me, Sophia," he said, smiling. "I'm not here for games, Oliver. What do you want?" He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with malice. "What I've always wanted. You," she scoffed in disbelief. "That's never going to happen." "Then maybe Ethan should learn more about the deals he's so proud of," Oliver said with a shrug. "Did you know he's involved in an illegal contract with a foreign company? I bet the shareholders would love to know." Sophia froze. Was Oliver lying? Or was there really something Ethan hadn't told her? Back at the mansion, Sophia found Ethan still awake, sitting in the living room with a glass of whiskey. His eyes were red, but his expression was steely. "You went out?" he asked flatly. "I needed some air." He laughed bitterly. "Air? For what? To run away again?" She felt the pain in his words but didn't respond. The silence was broken only by the clink of ice in his glass. Finally, she said, "Ethan, are you hiding something from me?" He looked at her in disbelief. "Are you serious? You, accusing me of hiding something?" "Oliver," she hesitated before continuing, "said you're involved in illegal deals." Ethan's face hardened. He stood slowly, towering over her. "So now you believe you're ex-fiancé? Perfect. It's not that. I just want the truth." "The truth?" He laughed without humor. "The truth is, I trusted you. I believed our marriage was built on something real. But now, I don't even know who you are." The next morning, Sophia decided to investigate on her own. She went to Ethan's office at Carter Tech and requested access to some recent contracts. The secretary hesitated at first but relented under Sophia's persistence. What Sophia found was troubling. Documents that appeared to indicate a partnership with a company based in a country under economic sanctions. If this were true, it could destroy Ethan and his company. When she returned home, Ethan was already waiting for her, his expression grim. "You went to the office today." "Why?" "Because I needed to understand what's going on." He shook his head in disappointment. "You don't trust me, do you? Do you trust me?" She shot back. The silence that followed was deafening. Meanwhile, David Harris continued his investigation. He had followed Oliver to a meeting at a luxury hotel and overheard a conversation that changed everything. Oliver was working directly with Ethan's competitors to ruin his reputation while also exposing Sophia's past. David didn't fully understand why he was so drawn to this story, but something about Sophia intrigued him. He decided to confront her again. That evening, David showed up at the NGO. "Sophia, I think you'll want to hear what I've uncovered about your dear ex-fiancé." She looked at him with distrust, but he continued. "Oliver is playing a dangerous game. He wants to ruin Ethan, and you're the key piece." "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I'm not as cruel as he is. And honestly, I want to understand why someone like you chose to live this life." Sophia hesitated but decided to trust him, at least for now. Later, Sophia tried to reach out to Ethan again. She found him in his office, reviewing the same contracts she had seen earlier. "Ethan, we need to talk." He didn't look up. "I have nothing to say." "Then I'll talk. I know I was wrong to hide who I am, but I did it to protect the life we built together. Now it feels like we're tearing it all apart." Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were filled with pain. "Do you think this is easy for me? It's not just about what you hid. It's about what it means. How can I believe that nothing else was a lie?" She stepped closer, touching his hand. "I'm not asking you to forgive me now. I'm just asking you to let me help." He watched her for a long moment before finally saying, "Then prove it." That morning, Sophia woke up determined. Ethan's words, asterisk, "then prove it, asterisk," echoed in her mind. He was right. It was time to act, not just to save their marriage, but to protect Ethan's reputation and company from the threats closing in around them. Her first stop was the NGO. She needed to ensure her staff could handle operations in her absence. As she finalized the finances, a message flashed on her phone. "Last chance, Sophia. Pick a side." Oh gee, Oliver was becoming bolder. She knew she couldn't ignore this any longer. Sophia decided to meet with David Harris, the journalist who seemed to know more than she was comfortable with. She found him at a cafe in downtown Manhattan. He greeted her with a wry smile, but his tone was serious. "So, you've decided to trust me after all? I don't have another choice. I need to know what you've uncovered about Oliver and how he plans to take down Ethan." David slid an envelope across the table. "Oliver is working with a company called Grayson International. It's a front, but the records show Ethan signed contracts with them without knowing the connection. Oliver is pulling the strings to frame your husband." Sophia opened the envelope and found copies of the contracts. Ethan's signature was on each one, but there were footnotes clearly added after the agreements were signed. "Is this a forgery?" David nodded. "But it'll look legitimate if Oliver gets this information to the public first. He wants to destroy Ethan and use you as the catalyst." Sophia felt a mix of anger and despair. "Why would he do this?" "Because he still wants you, Sophia. And taking down Ethan is the easiest way to have you." Back at the mansion, Sophia found Ethan in his office. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes as he stared at his computer. "Ethan, we need to talk," he sighed, not looking up. "If it's another secret you've decided to reveal, maybe save it for another day." Sophia took a deep breath. "This isn't about me. It's about you." That got his attention. He finally looked up, frowning. "What do you mean?" "Oliver is behind all of this. He's using forged contracts to incriminate you and destroy Carter Tech." Ethan stood, visibly irritated. "Are you serious, Sophia? You expect me to believe that the man you left is now trying to ruin my life?" "It's not a guess, Ethan. I have proof." She placed the documents on the table. He hesitated but finally picked them up. As he read, disbelief turned into a silent fury. These contracts, how did he get these? He's working with your competitors, Ethan. It's a setup. Ethan closed his eyes, running his hands over his face. And how exactly did you get this information? David Harris. The journalist's name made Ethan laugh bitterly. Of course. So now you trust the man exploiting your past for headlines. Sophia's frustration boiled over. Ethan, I'm trying to help you. You can either trust me or fight this alone. Your choice. As Ethan processed the information, Sophia received an unexpected call. It was her father, William Bennett. Sophia, we need to talk. She hesitated but knew she couldn't ignore him. Facing Oliver sooner or later was inevitable, and her father could be a critical player in this game. When she arrived at her family's mansion in Connecticut, she found William in his study, sitting in a leather armchair. He looked older, but his posture was still commanding. So, you finally decided to come home? This isn't a sentimental visit, Dad. I need your help. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. My help? I thought you didn't need me anymore. Oliver is trying to destroy my husband. He forged documents to incriminate Ethan, and I need to stop him before it's too late. William was silent for a moment, studying his daughter. And why should I help Ethan Carter? A man who's never respected our family? Because if you don't, Oliver will destroy everything, including our family's reputation. William finally relented, but with a condition. If I do this, you'll need to reconsider your stance on the Bennett Empire. Sophia knew she was being manipulated but had no other choice. Fine, just tell me what to do. That night, Sophia returned home with a plan. She told Ethan everything she had arranged with her father, but he was reluctant to trust her. So now you want me to accept help from the man you spent years running away from? Ethan, I know it feels wrong, but this is the only way to clear your name. He sighed, defeated. Fine, but if this backfires, there'll be no fixing things between us. The next day, William Bennett used his influence to expose the connection between Oliver and Grayson International. At a press conference, he revealed documents proving the contracts had been manipulated and cleared Ethan of any wrongdoing. Oliver, however, didn't go down without a fight. He tried to pin the scheme on Sophia, claiming she was part of it, but his accusations lacked evidence. Still, the damage was done. Ethan's trust in Sophia remained broken, and Carter Tech shareholders were nervous. As things began to settle on the professional front, Sophia and Ethan's marriage lay in ruins. That night, Sophia packed her bags. "You're leaving?" Ethan asked, surprised. "I don't want to, but it feels like there's no space for both of us here anymore." He stayed silent but didn't stop her from leaving. Sophia checked into a small hotel downtown. Sitting on the bed, she looked out at the city lights. It was hard to believe everything she'd built was falling apart. Her phone rang, and for a moment, she hoped it was Ethan. But it was David Harris. "Sophia, I think I found something that could change everything. Can we meet? Do Sophia and Ethan still have a chance? Or has their love been destroyed by secrets and lies?" Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next thrilling chapter of the story. The rain poured heavily that night as Sophia walked through the streets of New York City to the cafe where David Harris was waiting. The journalist sat in a quiet corner, his laptop open and his expression grave. As soon as she approached, he motioned for her to sit. "Sophia, what I found is bigger than I expected." He turned the laptop screen toward her. displaying a series of emails and confidential documents. Sophia frowned, reading the exchanges between Oliver and one of Carter Tech's top executives. This proves Oliver isn't just trying to destroy Ethan, David explained. He has an ally inside the company. Sophia immediately recognized the name. Samuel Hayes, Ethan's right-hand man. Samuel? Her voice was a whisper of disbelief. He's worked with Ethan for years. Why would he do this? David closed the laptop. Because Oliver bribed him. He wants to take Ethan down and seize control of the company with the backing of international competitors. Sophia felt the weight of the revelations. If this was true, Ethan wasn't just facing external enemies but betrayal from within his own team. That same night, Sophia went straight to Carter Tech. Using her connection with Ethan's secretary, she got into the building and found Samuel in an empty conference room, reviewing contracts. "Samuel, we need to talk." Her voice was firm, though her heart raced. He looked up, surprised, but quickly regained his composure. "Sophia, this isn't a good time." "Then explain this." She threw a folder of evidence onto the table. Samuel flipped through the documents, his face growing paler with each page. Finally, he sighed. "Who told you about this? Does it matter?" She crossed her arms. "What matters is that you're sabotaging Ethan." Samuel tried to remain calm, but his eyes betrayed his nerves. "Sophia, you don't understand what's happening. Oliver made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Ethan doesn't value anyone but himself. He uses me as a tool, and Oliver promised me something Ethan never did. Recognition, and for that you'd destroy his life?" Sophia asked, her voice filled with indignation. "You betrayed him, and by extension you betrayed me." Samuel stayed silent, but Sophia knew she had to act quickly. That night, Sophia called Ethan, but he didn't answer. Desperate, she drove to the mansion and found him in his office, a nearly empty bottle of whiskey by his side. He looked exhausted, but his expression hardened when he saw her. "What do you want, Sophia?" His voice was cutting. She placed the documents on the desk. "Samuel is working with Oliver. They're trying to take you down from within Carter Tech." Ethan glanced at the papers but didn't touch them. "Why should I believe you?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Because I love you, Ethan. And even if you think you can't trust me, I could never betray you." He stared at her for a long moment, his expression finally softening. "If this is true, we don't have any time to waste." The next morning, Ethan called an emergency meeting with Carter Tech's top shareholders. Sophia stood by his side as he presented the evidence of Samuel's betrayal and Oliver's conspiracy. "I was deceived by someone I trusted completely," Ethan admitted. "But this ends now." The shareholders were impressed by the presentation and chose to support Ethan rather than let Oliver's plan succeed. Samuel was immediately fired, and legal actions were initiated against him and Oliver. But the professional victory didn't resolve everything between Sophia and Ethan. That night, as they celebrated the shareholders' decision, the atmosphere between them remained tense. "You saved Carter Tech today," Ethan said, pouring himself a glass of wine. "It was a team effort," Sophia replied, trying to sound optimistic. He looked her in the eyes and finally asked, "But what about us? How do we fix this?" Sophia hesitated. She knew Ethan's pain wouldn't disappear easily. "Ethan, I know I made a mistake hiding my past, but I did it because I was afraid of losing you, and I made a mistake letting doubt consume me," he admitted. "But trust has to be rebuilt, and that's going to take time." Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm willing to wait. Meanwhile, Oliver, publicly humiliated, was plotting his revenge. Though he had lost control of the situation, he wasn't ready to accept defeat. In a last desperate act, he tried to reach Sophia again, sending her an enigmatic message. "You think you've won, Sophia? This is far from over." Sophia showed the message to Ethan, and for the first time in weeks, he embraced her. "We won't let him destroy us," he said. "No," Sophia replied. "We won't." The next morning, Sophia and Ethan received news that Oliver had left the country, likely to avoid the investigations. The threat seemed to have finally disappeared. That same day, Ethan surprised Sophia with something she hadn't expected. "I want to show you something." He took her to a small, cozy house on the outskirts of New York. "This is our new home," he said, "a place where we can start fresh, without the weight of the past." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "Do you really think we can start over?" Ethan took her hands in his. "I want to try, because despite everything, I still love you." Do you believe love can overcome wounds this deep? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the thrilling conclusion of this story. The days that followed were a mix of hope and uncertainty. The small house Ethan had brought Sophia to felt like a fresh start, but also carried echoes of everything they had lost along the way. It wasn't just a physical move. It symbolized their struggle to rebuild something that had almost been destroyed. Ethan remained reserved. Though he had shown a willingness to start over, the wounds of the past still lingered in his gestures and hesitation to fully trust her. Sophia noticed it but understood she couldn't rush the process. One morning, as she rearranged the furniture in the living room, she found a small box Ethan had left on the table. Inside were old photos of the two of them of trips and celebrations. On the back of one, he had written, "The beginning of everything." Sophia felt the weight of those words. What they had in the beginning seemed so far away, yet it still existed. She knew she had to fight to bring it back. That evening, during dinner, Sophia broke the silence that had stretched over them for days. "Ethan, I need to know something. Do you think you'll ever be able to completely forgive me?" He took a long time to answer, pushing his food around with his fork. Finally, he looked up. "It's not about forgiveness, Sophia. In some ways, I've already forgiven you. But trusting again, that's harder." She nodded, feeling the ache in her chest. "And if it doesn't work?" Ethan reached for her hand. "Then at least we'll have tried." In the days that followed, they began working on something they had neglected for far too long: communication. Ethan suggested that they be completely honest about everything, no matter how small. "If we want to rebuild what we had, we need to start by being honest with each other every day," he said. Sophia agreed, knowing that transparency was the only way to heal the scars left by their secrets. But then, an unexpected piece of news disrupted Sophia's plans. Her father, William Bennett, had suffered a heart attack and was in critical condition. Though she had distanced herself from him for years, the news hit her like a blow. "Are you going to see him?" Ethan asked as she packed a suitcase in a rush. "I have to. He's the only family I have left, despite everything." Ethan hesitated but then said, "I'll go with you." Sophia looked at him, surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I don't want you to face this alone." The hospital in Connecticut was cold and impersonal. William lay in an ICU bed, hooked up to machines monitoring his vitals. When Sophia entered the room, his eyes opened slowly, and he gave her a faint smile. "Sophia." She took his hand, feeling the fragility of the man who had always seemed so invincible. "I'm here, Dad." William made an effort to speak. "I always knew you were strong. Stronger than me." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "I'm not that strong, Dad. I've made so many mistakes." He squeezed her hand tighter. "Maybe, but you fought for what you believed in. That's more than most can say." Before drifting back into unconsciousness, William whispered, "Don't lose Ethan. He's your true home." The next day, William passed away. Sophia was devastated but found comfort in Ethan's presence, who stayed by her side throughout the funeral. On the drive back home, something seemed to shift between them. "He was right, Ethan said, breaking the silence. "About what? About us. Despite everything, you've always been my home too." Back in the city, Sophia and Ethan began making plans for the future. She decided to sell the inheritance her father had left her and use the funds to expand her NGO, now with Ethan's support. Ethan, in turn, announced his decision to step down as CEO of Carter Tech to focus on social projects alongside her. "I spent so much time chasing success that I forgot what really matters," he explained. "I don't want to make that mistake again." On the night they officially decided to start this new chapter, Ethan surprised Sophia with something she didn't expect. He decorated the living room of their new home with soft lights and prepared a simple but meaningful dinner. "What's all this?" she asked, smiling. "A new beginning. For real this time." Ethan pulled something out of his pocket. "A new wedding ring. I want to renew our vows. Not as a CEO and the perfect wife, but as two people who chose to stay together despite everything." Sophia couldn't hold back her tears as he slid the ring onto her finger. "I choose you too, Ethan. Always." The scars from Sophia and Ethan's story never completely disappeared, but they transformed into marks of growth and resilience. Their small home on the outskirts of New York became the heart of their new life together. It was simple yet meaningful, a constant reminder that the best things often come from the hardest choices. Sophia threw herself into her NGO, which now had a new headquarters funded by her father's inheritance. The project had grown exponentially, offering not just shelter, but also education and psychological support to women in vulnerable situations. Ethan, on the other hand, used his business expertise to help manage the organization's expansion. He discovered an unexpected fulfillment in contributing to something focused on human impact rather than profit. One afternoon at the NGO, Ethan watched Sophia as she spoke to a group of women who had found the strength to start over. He smiled, seeing in her the unwavering determination he had come to admire all over again. "You're staring at me like that again, aren't you?" she teased, walking over to him. "I can't help it," he said with a laugh. "You're amazing." Sophia gave a shy smile, something rare, but which he loved. "I'm just doing what I believe is right." Ethan took her hand. "And that's exactly what makes me love you." Months later, Sophia and Ethan organized a fundraising event for the NGO. It wasn't extravagant, but it was deeply meaningful. Former shelter residents took the stage to share their stories, moving everyone in attendance. When it was Sophia's turn to speak, she hesitated for a moment, scanning the crowd. Her eyes found Ethan, who encouraged her with a smile. "For many years, I lived in fear of being who I truly was," she began. "The fear of losing the people I loved made me hide parts of myself. But today, looking at all these women who found the courage to start over, I realized that vulnerability is the greatest form of strength." The audience applauded, but it was the look she exchanged with Ethan that mattered most. Later that night, back at home, Ethan was preparing tea while Sophia sorted through some letters. Among them, she found an envelope addressed to her with no return address. Curious, she opened it and found a handwritten letter. It was from her father, William Bennett. The shaky handwriting revealed it had been written shortly before his death. "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I no longer have the chance to say everything I wish I could. I want you to know that despite our differences, I have always been proud of the person you chose to be. Walking away from wealth and power wasn't a weakness. It was a testament to your courage. You taught me that a person's true worth isn't in their possessions but in the impact they make on others. Ethan is a lucky man to have you, just as you are to have him. Never let pride or fear destroy what you have. True love is rare, and it's worth every sacrifice. With love, your father." Sophia pressed the letter to her chest as silent tears fell. When Ethan walked into the room, she called him over and handed him the letter. He read it quietly, then wrapped her in an embrace. "He was right, Ethan said softly. True love is worth every sacrifice." Sophia nodded, feeling a sense of peace about her past and her present. As years passed, the impact of Sophia and Ethan's journey endured. The NGO became a national model, helping thousands of women rebuild their lives. Ethan founded an organization that encouraged young entrepreneurs to create socially responsible businesses. Above all, they became living proof that even the most damaged relationships can be rebuilt with honesty, dedication, and love. One sunny afternoon, Sophia and Ethan sat in the garden of their home, watching the flowers they had planted together bloom. Sophia said with a smile, "I never imagined our story would take this path." "Neither did I," Ethan replied. "But looking back, I wouldn't change a thing." "Nothing?" she teased. He held her hand, his voice serious. "Nothing, because every mistake, every hurt, brought us here." They kissed as the late afternoon sun bathed the garden in a warm glow. It was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of so many others to come. And what about you? Do you believe true love can withstand life's greatest storms? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this one. Thank you for watching.